Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everyone's ready for the weekend. I have a super special guest today, Rae Bradford.
Hi, Linda. Thanks for having me on.
I'm super excited. I just want to tell you guys a little bit about Tara. Tara is amazing. She does all of these workshops surrounding speaking and getting publicity. And I met her actually on Facebook, which is the place to be sometimes, you guys. I completely was in awe of her and all that she was doing, and just amazed by her giving to others. That was the first thing that really struck me about her. She is a publicity strategist, a communications expert, and an international speaker. Tara works with business owners to help them see themselves the way the rest of the world sees them, so they can become the center of influence. She is passionate about helping people everywhere create meaningful connections, and I can attest to this because she's sent several people my way for the podcast that I have been so thankful to have because they've been great guests. And she lives in New York City, where my daughter lives, and I happen to love New York now. I used to be terrified of it because I had heard all these stories. And so I had all these stories in my head from the time I was a kid until I went there and I was like, this is amazing. So, like, I love New York City now, and she meets at least one person there new every day. And I believe it because Tara is the friendliest person you ever want to meet and sincerely sweet. All the time, you guys, on the internet, I see her helping people out. And so I'm quite impressed with Tara from afar, and also now that I actually know Tara, I'm even more impressed. So I just want to welcome the beautiful Tara Rae to the Sisterhood of Sweat.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction.
Thank
You're
you.
so sweet. Thank
Well,
you.
well, you are the best. I mean, you guys, if you need any kind of publicity, I'm telling you, Tara is just amazing. And I have to say, she's fearless, although she once upon a time was afraid.
I was, and I still get afraid. I think being fearless doesn't mean that you're never scared anymore. It
Right,
just means that you have some tools in your tool belt to handle it differently.
right. And today we're going to give you guys some tools in your tool belt about a really important topic. How do we rebuild trust once it's lost? And I have to think that this has affected 99.9% of us at some point or another. And I'm just going to have Tara kind of tell you her backstory in case you guys didn't see Tara when she was on before. We had all about the imposter syndrome that we may have. And that's an episode. You should go back and check it out because it was off the charts. But I just want her to kind of give you a little backstory in case you didn't catch that about how she came to this being her mission to find out why it was important to rebuild trust.
Thank you, Linda. So I think I first became aware of this about 6 or 7 years ago now, when I realized I was getting divorced, and I felt like a failure. I thought I failed at marriage, which was one of the things that I thought I needed to do by a certain age. I graduated from college and I thought I have to meet the right person, and we have to get married, and we have to have kids, and we have to have the house with the white picket fence and the dog and all the things. And here I was, I want to say 6 months into being married, and I found out some information about my husband at the time that made me question everything that he had ever told me. And so I didn't know what to do. And we ended up going to couples counseling for 6 months. And then we got divorced on our 1 year anniversary. And after that, I thought, well, now I've not only failed at marriage, I failed at learning how to rebuild trust too, because I thought going to therapy, we would figure that out. And once we got there, that was like the last thing we talked about. We talked about all these other things that I did not think were that important. And the trust thing got pushed to the back burner. So, needless to say, by the time my marriage ended, I still did not know how to rebuild trust. And I was trying to figure it out because I thought, I'm not making the same mistake twice. I'm not going to get into another relationship and bring all of this baggage with me, but I'm also not going to find myself in this situation again and handle it the way that I handled it. And so I ended up I started reading books, I started talking to people and asking questions, and really trying to understand what it is that makes someone trustworthy, and also trying to figure out how can I trust my gut so that when I know something's a bad idea, I don't do it anyway. Because
Oh yeah, that's super hard sometimes.
yeah, I knew getting married was a bad idea before I did it. And my friends knew it was a bad idea. And I did it anyway. And I ignored that little voice in my head or that gut feeling that was like, this is not going to go well. But I thought I can make anything work. And I see the best in everybody. So it's fine. Like everything will be fine. All you need is love. That's it. And then everything else will work itself out. And I was lying to myself. All you need is not love. You also need trust and a few other things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was kind of the beginning of me trying to figure this out. How can you trust again? And what are the key components of that? And so I think I don't have all the answers, but what I've learned is that to be trustworthy, you have to do what you say you're going to do. And if you're not going to do it, then don't say that you'll do it. Don't volunteer. Don't raise your hand. Don't say yes. And so that was one thing I think I've always done naturally. I did a little personal branding exercise when I started my business where I had to ask 25 people, what are the top 3 to 5 things that come to mind when you think of me? And one of the most common things people said was, you always do what you say you're going to do. And I thought that was really interesting because we don't see ourselves the way that other people see us. And that was something that stuck with me where I was like, there's something here. And maybe that's why people trust me. So I put that tool in my tool belt. And then I posted on Facebook recently about being honest and how hard it is sometimes to just tell the truth because we're afraid we're going to offend somebody. We're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing. Maybe we're afraid we're going to sound dumb. Maybe we we just maybe we don't know. I know when you look at introverts and extroverts, we communicate in different ways. And I'm an introvert, and so I need to sit with my thoughts to think about how I'm feeling before I say anything. And extroverts communicate, they say exactly what they're thinking and they process the information as they hear themselves say it. So,
I
yeah,
do that
so
a
if
lot.
you're in a relationship and one of you is always like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? I know something's wrong. Just tell me what's wrong." And the other person is like, "I don't know, nothing. I'm fine. Leave me alone." Then probably really don't know because you haven't given them the space to think about it. And you're probably the extrovert who has to process things by talking about it. And so understanding how you communicate in conflict or even just in conversation, how you process new information is helpful in knowing how you can get to that point where you can be more honest about things it could be a matter of just processing the information before you say it.
Now, in a
And
relationship, trust is number one. Don't you agree?
I do. I think it
Respect
is.
is second. I mean, I think they kind of go hand in hand,
Yeah.
and they're key things to have in your relationship. And do you believe that someone should earn your trust first, or do you just give it away right at the beginning before you know somebody?
I think everyone probably has a different answer to this, and I'd be curious to know if anyone's watching live
I know what
what
my answer is.
your answer is. My answer is to trust everyone until they prove that they're not trustworthy, and then to figure out why that is, what's going on. Is it that they don't feel like they can be honest with me? Is it me getting defensive when they are honest? What is going on that's preventing that from happening? Is it jealousy? Is it um, we bring all of these past experiences into our new relationships, and sometimes we handle it well and sometimes we don't. And how can we be aware of that so we know what we're bringing with us and use that to create more trust instead of less trust?
I do like that. I like that a lot. I think sometimes when you've been in a relationship where perhaps your safety was, like mine was um, majorly in question, and you your trust is shattered, you have a little bit more trouble, I think, moving ahead, trusting people automatically. I used to just trust people automatically. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
completely, wholly from the get-go. And then after my experience with abuse and just being in a terrible relationship, I made people earn my trust. I didn't just give it away freely, but I do like the idea of trust until trust is violated. That's a new
Mm-hmm.
concept. I'll entertain it because I think I might need to let go of some of these old notions because it's I've moved on and my life is so different now. But how do we keep from creating this baggage when we are betrayed, perhaps by a friend, perhaps by a loved one or someone we're married to, someone at work, perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
How do we keep from carrying this distrust forward in other relationships?
I think part of it is managing our own emotions around what happened and really understanding them. And first I want to say, I want to go back to what you said about your situation. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I think there is a difference between trusting someone in a relationship where none of those things have happened. There hasn't been a cycle of abuse or fear or anything like that versus a relationship where there was lying like mine. And
Well, there was a lot of lying too, so
yeah,
it was just
I mean, I think
everything.
if it comes back to your fear and how safe you feel. And so if you're in a relationship where you don't feel safe, then I think the trust conversation is a little bit more involved. There's a lot more layers to that than um, my situation that I was referring to, where I still talk to a therapist about it, and I would recommend doing that. But I think I wasn't afraid. My life wasn't in danger. I was upset and I was disappointed, but I didn't have that extra layer of abuse and things going on where it would have prevented me from walking away.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
just
think
I
there's
just wanted
probably
to.
some fear there, but and that's probably the self-protection mechanism of then everyone has to earn my trust. I don't just
Right.
always just give it away automatically.
Right. And earning could be going back to your intuition and checking in. Like, where am I feeling this fear in my body? What does it feel like? And the last time I felt this, what was happening? because your body remembers what happened, past trauma, past things that have happened. And for me, the first time this came up was after I moved to New York City, which was 5 or 6 years after I got divorced. I had this feeling I was getting ready to leave New York and I was going to move to DC. And I had that same gut feeling. And I thought, where have I felt this before? And it was when I was about to get married and I knew it was a bad idea and I got married anyway. I was not in a relationship. I was moving to a new city, but I had that same feeling where I was afraid or I knew something was off. And it was because I didn't want to leave. And I ended up staying in New York and listening to that. And so I think going back to those memories, they can actually serve a purpose. They can serve you. They can guide you in a better direction so you don't make the same decision twice. And all you have to do is listen to them and pay attention and notice where you're feeling that. Is it tightness in your throat? Is it burning in your nose, like you feel like you're going to cry? Is it like heaviness in your gut or like a knot in your stomach? Where are you feeling that? And then go back to when was the last time I felt this way? And what did that mean? And did I make a bad decision then that didn't serve me? And how can I redirect my decisions this time instead of reacting to the fear and running away or getting defensive and fighting or freezing and doing nothing? What did I do last time? And was that the best thing to do? And if it wasn't the best thing to do, how can I change my reaction this time?
Yeah, I really love that, and it actually led
That
me
was a
to
lot.
it led me
I
it
think
was
we might have
beautiful, it's
frozen.
so beautiful. It led me to the thinking of then we began to distrust ourselves because we were the ones that decided to be in the relationship. And so, in essence, isn't it we need to learn to trust ourselves again after we make a mistake?
Mhm. It is. And really take control and notice what you do have control over. You have control over your decisions. You have control over who you surround yourself with. And you have those choices to make. And you're absolutely right. Trusting yourself is the very first thing I would do when I was thinking about how can I trust another person again. And it comes back to self-compassion, self-love, taking care of yourself, trusting your gut, and really, I the saying is so common, I feel like now, but putting your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else, like on the airplane, or filling your cup first because you can't pour from an empty cup. This is what it comes back to, I think.
And I just think a lot of times we have a hard time, like how you said you had that gut feeling. If you would have paid attention to that, you would have been trusting yourself. And
Mhm.
sometimes you're not in tune with that enough. It's like a muscle, like anything else. You have to practice using that gut, like that trusting your gut, because it definitely it's never mine's never been wrong. Like, and so I think of the times that when I look back, that I should have trusted it. And when it's kicking in hard, sometimes it doesn't make sense at all. Like
Mhm.
where you're like before I tore my hamstring, my gut was not to be going all out, not to be performing full force. And I felt it really strong, but my husband came and he was gonna video, so what did I do? Because I wanted him to see the routine because I was wearing his baseball number. And so I did it. I ignored my intuition, which was kicking in super hard. But there's times I have not ignored that. So I think it's just like a muscle, like with anything else, when your gut is kicking in hard, that is part of learning to trust yourself, right?
And listening and really learning to validate yourself too instead of looking for that external validation, because sometimes we fall into that trap of, well, everyone else says it's okay or thinks it's a good idea, or like my husband's watching, I don't want to let him down or disappoint him. And
Yeah.
so that takes away from starting with ourselves and listening to ourselves first instead of listening to everyone else first.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you do get in a relationship, uh, and you're in it for a while, and somebody then violates the trust, and you've decided to stay with this partner, don't you think they need to rebuild trust?
I think I think it's safe to assume that we're all human and we're
Yeah,
going to mess up at some point.
we all do.
And
Yeah.
so we do. And rebuilding trust is something that is going to happen in any relationship. And forgiveness is probably one of the most important things to learn how to do. Forgive yourself, forgive the other person, and be open to having an honest conversation about it, and really give each other permission to be open about how the situation made you feel. I think for me, one of the most game changing, life changing moments was when I was sitting in therapy and the therapist named what I was feeling. And she said, "You must have felt so ashamed." And when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you get me. Like, you understand what I'm going through. And so just hearing each other and listening and being able to say things like that, like I was embarrassed, I was disappointed, I was ashamed, or I felt guilty, or I was afraid. It's really powerful, vulnerable, but also healing to say that out loud, especially to someone that you are in a relationship with, that you've been with for a long time and you care about each other.
I think when you get in touch with those feelings, things are less scary and your healing can begin because it's not like you died from the person betraying you. I mean, it's not like,
Yeah.
you're alive and you can have your full life ahead of you, uh, just making different choices about everything. Like maybe there were some things you were giving up in the relationship. Maybe you weren't that happy to begin with. I mean, there's so many things. If you really look at it, I think a lot of the time it's just you feel like you were dumped, you feel like you were betrayed, and you're focusing on all this rejection. But if you really looked
Hmm.
at it, you might be like, well, it wasn't really that great of a relationship. What? Why
That
was it?
was
Why am I,
me.
why am I so upset about losing this, right?
Yeah. It was actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was really upset. Even though I wasn't surprised, I was super upset about it. And it was, what is everyone going to think? I'm the youngest person I know that's divorced. I think I was 25 or 26 at the time. And I didn't want to tell anybody. I took all of our wedding pictures off of Facebook. I took down our wedding website and just like pretended it never happened, like I went into the witness protection program or something. And I
That makes
know.
sense to me
I
because
did.
it's
I
just
hid
like you want to go
everything.
hibernate and hide because you're wounded.
Yeah. Right. But now looking back, I'm so grateful for that experience, because I think learning those lessons, even though it was the hard way, learning them has made me the person that I am today. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn those things about myself, but also about people and about trust and about relationships. And now my whole business is centered around helping people create professional relationships that are win-wins for everybody. And I think that I would not be here. I know that I would not be here
Oh,
if I
right. You
hadn't
would not be
had
there.
that experience.
Oh my
So,
gosh, that just brought me full circle. I would not have this podcast. I would not have my book in my studio, The Sisterhood of Sweat,
mhm.
helping other women to build their confidence and self-esteem. so that they are in the life they love and
Mm-hmm.
not one that they want to run away from.
Yeah.
So that makes so much sense to me. And I also kind of want to address the lies that we believe sometimes when we're in these relationships that where the trust is broken, uh, you know, which put fear sometimes into us, and we
Mm-hmm.
may not leave a relationship that we should leave where there is no trust. And maybe it isn't going to be restored anytime soon. Maybe the person
Mm-hmm.
isn't doing their work and you just think it's a lost cause. And I just remember, and we were talking about this before the show, but I remember my ex saying, "You're going to be old and alone."
Mm-hmm.
And it was a fear, like, oh my gosh, like, because I was only like 28 and old. I'm going to be old? Oh, I don't want to be old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, old was a disease and there was something wrong with being old. And like, then I believed the lie of I'm going to be alone. Actually, I had more friends than I ever had before because I wasn't isolated. And so that was
Mm-hmm.
a lie that I believed. And also, like we were talking earlier, you can be alone and not be lonely. You can be,
Yeah.
you know, like sometimes you're in a relationship, if there's no trust, that is the loneliest place on
Mm-hmm.
God's green earth. It's so lonely if you don't have trust. So being alone, you don't necessarily have to be lonely.
Right. And there's a beautiful quote that I love. I don't remember who said it, but it's something like the way that you love yourself is how you teach other people to love you. And I just think that's so beautiful. And it's exactly what you're talking about. When I left my relationship and I chose to be alone and to figure out what I wanted and to give myself permission to live in whatever city I wanted and do whatever I felt like doing, that was when I stopped feeling lonely, which is so interesting to me that I was more lonely in my relationships than I ever have been by myself. And going back to what you said too about fear and about being afraid to leave, there's a great book. It's called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. And it's about leaving abusive relationships, trusting your gut, understanding what that fear means, and how fear can actually save your life when you listen to it. And I think it's a great book for any woman to read, even if you're not in an abusive relationship. It's just really interesting how you can get in touch with your body. And you might enjoy it, Linda.
I'm
Going back
totally going
to,
to read it.
yeah,
I'm on
do
it.
people need to earn your trust? Or when you trust yourself, do you already have everything you need inside of you?
I love it. I love
It's a
it.
great
I
book.
love doing the work because the work is rewarding. And, you know, we're put on this planet for a reason. And is if you stay more vital and alive, if you keep growing, and there's none of us out there that don't suffer from some kind of problem, or you know we all are vulnerable, we've all had hurts, and we've all made mistakes in our life. So
Mm-hmm.
who are we if we can't learn and grow?
Right. And the way that you show women how to be more confident and how to be their most authentic selves, I think is a great starting point to prevent some of these things from happening. Because if I had been more confident in my relationship, I never would have probably been in that relationship. But I also would have spoken up and said something for myself and been like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, because I think as women, sometimes we tend to let ourselves be bullied. I know that sounds
Hmm.
kind of cliche, but I think that we do. I think that we can be people pleasing and just not asking enough from our partner for what we want, and for
Hmm.
ourselves we think it's selfish. And I say be a little more, I hate to say it, but be a little more selfish. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there's nothing wrong with you saying what your needs are and having them met. Of course, not one person can meet all of our needs,
Right.
but they should meet some of them.
Right. And I think the one person who can meet all of our needs is us.
Yeah.
And also to go back to the people pleaser thing, I work with men and women, and I was kind of surprised when I started working with men and I
Oh,
found out
okay.
they're people pleasers too. And
Oh,
a
okay.
lot of
Yeah.
these
I
same
guess it's not
things,
just
yeah,
one
I mean,
sex or the other.
right. We think it's just women because we're women and we talk about it. But when I started talking to more men about this, they have a lot of the same concerns and a lot of the same struggles that we have too. And it comes back to just putting everyone else ahead of ourselves and putting ourselves last on our to-do list or priority list. And
Not
so,
making ourselves important enough.
right. And I think it's something that both genders struggle with, not to discount women or anything, but
Yeah,
I
that's
also
probably true. I
want
could see
to,
my husband in that role. He puts us first. He, works so hard to, he, to help put my son through college and, my daughter's wedding and my school and now my gym. Like he's pretty darn amazing. So if you're out there
yeah.
listening, honey, thank you so much for everything you do.
And hope for other women who are thinking that we have to date people who make us feel afraid or make us feel bad about ourselves and learn these lessons. And you don't. There are great guys out there too.
Yeah. So what do you like? Do you think people, like in a relationship, like, I'm married or I'm dating and I only have to earn trust once. Or do I have to keep earning that trust? How does that all play out, do you feel?
I think you keep earning it by continuing to grow, to work on yourself, to start those difficult conversations and create a safe space to have those conversations with each other and to be open, express yourself, to trust yourself, but also be open to expecting that things aren't going to be perfect all the time and that you'll have to have these difficult conversations with each other instead of sweeping it under the rug and pretending it didn't happen. And to really, and when things come up that are frustrating or that make you angry, it's okay to say that I'm angry right now. And I'd prefer if we talked about this later after I've had a chance to cool off or sit with my thoughts or figure out what I want to say. Because most often when we're angry or frustrated is when we say things we don't mean. And that actually digs us in a deeper hole where, okay, we didn't trust each other. Now we're angry and we're saying things we don't mean. And now we're further away from trust than we were when we initially had the disagreement.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people are very passionate and the fireworks begin to it's the
That's
4th of July
true.
and
That's
it's
true.
December.
Well, and I think the most important thing to remember there is that when you're on the same team, there's no winner and loser. You're on the same team and you're fighting for the same things. You just might be using different words to describe it. But if you zoom out far enough, you might realize that you're both shooting for the same goal and you're thinking that you're aiming at different targets.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Now, since all of this and you have made it your mission to find out why it's so important to rebuild trust, what do you feel that you are doing differently and that you have learned?
Definitely trusting myself and really putting myself first and getting to know who I am, I think was huge for me. And sorry for the sirens in the background.
I was thinking it was a siren. She is in New York City, you guys, so this is
I am.
authentic, authentic.
I am. And so, also at the beginning of a relationship is when I start having these conversations where I'm totally honest and say things and just create the space to ask questions, to be curious about the other person, and to invite them to ask me questions where no topic is off limits from the very beginning so that we can continue to have the difficult conversations, but they don't have to be so hard. And so I think just creating that space to say what you want to say, obviously not from an intention that means to hurt another person, but just to say, this is how I feel. And we don't have to feel the same way about it, but just understand where I'm coming from and I understand where you're coming from.
There's freedom and honesty for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's surprising how much. And sometimes I think in relationships we're not entirely honest with each other when it starts or during it. Like we hide pieces of ourselves from our partner because we're afraid that they're not going to approve. And that is not complete honesty. So complete honesty is being your authentic self, no matter who might like it. You know, your partner might not like it. I mean, if maybe you weren't showing up like that person and all of a sudden you're showing them pieces they didn't realize were there. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
best policy is to be right up front about who you are and don't hide a single beautiful thing about yourself.
I couldn't agree with you more. I love that.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about, like, you were talking that it's okay to run away from something. And I find, I've seen myself running from certain things, and right now I can't run at all. And so that's terrible.
It's
Well, I
okay.
actually can. I discovered the other night when it was raining and I spray tanned, I ran to the car and I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that, but I can do that. Like, I can run again. And for those of you that don't know, I just had my hamstring reattached. So literally, you guys, I've discovered, because I am a fitness person, I was always using my running to run away from things that I didn't want to face or deal with. And now I have to find a new way to deal with them. I can't run away. So, but I want to hear about why. Why is it okay to run away if you're able to run?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't realize this until I came to New York City, and a lot of friends reached out and they said, "You are so brave going to New York by yourself and deciding to make it work." And I thought, well, I didn't feel brave at the time because I was running away from a job that I didn't like and I wanted to leave the town I was living in. And so I felt like I was running away, but I actually was running towards the life that I wanted and the city that I wanted to live in. But at the time, it felt very reactive. I was like, I just want to get away. I want to be anywhere but here. And really finding that focus and deciding to come to New York, looking back, was pretty brave, but it was, it started from a place of fear. It was, I'm afraid of what my life will be like if it stays exactly the same because I'm not happy. And so the fear of the unknown became less scary than the fear of the no, like what I knew, and knowing that things would keep going the way they were going and nothing was changing.
It's so funny, but it's just like the things that we're so afraid of. For instance, when I was young, I literally was in a play, and right beforehand, this person was sick, this kid was sick, and so they gave me all of the lines for that kid and me, because they had confidence in me, I guess. I see that now, but
Yeah.
this confidence was misplaced. I got up there and completely forgot all of my lines and their lines because it was just too much to absorb at that age right before standing on stage, and I froze on the stage. So I think it was why I was a little bit afraid to do, which is, anyone that knows me is like, you were? afraid to do a solo round on my podcast. It was like this thing. I think I only did one once, and it was about my brother, so it wasn't anything about, me at all. And I was so like afraid to do a solo round. I almost want to say, I don't think it was terrified, but it was borderline. And so I decided, I asked him story, how do I start speaking? I keep feeling like I'm supposed to speak, and it's just this thing. It won't leave me alone, and it just keeps on like, and he's like, start speaking to the people that are right in front of you. And so I thought about that. I was like, all right, because this thing just keeps on, every time I open an email, it's when are you going to start speaking? Oh, let me help you with that. Like, oh, overcoming the fear of public speaking. Oh, front row, Lewis Howe's Powerful You. What's the speech? Overcoming the fear of public speaking. I mean, it's just like, sometimes when you're pregnant, all you see is babies. And like when you're supposed to be doing something, that's all you hear about. So here I am. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I did. I've now got my second solo round, but I jumped in, I did the solo round. And then the fear, I was like, what was I so afraid of? Like, and it's just like that. It's like that. When you face that, whatever that fear is, you realize, why was I so afraid in the first place?
So true. That's great. I love that story. And I think a lot of people have the fear of public speaking and can relate.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's not like I haven't done it. I mean, really,
Right.
I've spoken on Miss Fitness stages, given speeches. I've talked to my class, millions of times. That's kind of like you're public, you're standing in front of,
Yeah.
and I've done so many performances. I don't know what it was. I think it was just stemming back to that childhood fear,
Mm-hmm.
and just actually it was, to me, a fear worse than death. I went and spoke at P&G, and I literally swallowed it like a pill before I decided I was not going to give a boring talk. I was not going to do the canned presentation that I had, which was bullet points, which I could easily fall back on. I was literally going to tell them a story about my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the best speech I've ever given. And people were engaged, asking questions. And right before that, I was like, all right, I'm just going to go get this over with down the hatch. Like, it's going to be over in an hour. Like, it was like this worst, terrible pill I was swallowing. And then it wasn't so bad. So I think it's just jumping in, trusting yourself that you can do it, and just
Mm-hmm.
getting over that fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just think this has been such the awesome conversation to
It
have.
has.
And I don't know if anybody has asked any questions. Let me look. Somebody said, hi, Tara. Brian says hi. It looks like my husband's on. Oh, it looks like we have 3 comments. Let's see.
Awesome. And I'll check back on the replay to answer questions if anybody had any questions come up
Yeah, if
too.
anybody has any questions about trust, or even just getting over fear of public speaking, because I know Tara, that would probably be another whole topic. I have a whole, I'm doing a solo round next Friday on this subject, but
Awesome.
Tara has overcome the fear of public speaking, and now she speaks all over the place.
I know I'm going to London next week.
Oh my gosh, that's so freaking exciting. Oh my
I
gosh,
know.
what are you going to speak about?
I'm talking about how to become the center of influence to a group of female entrepreneurs.
I love that. Well,
Yeah,
well, can you tell everyone, how can they sign up for your course?
absolutely. So I actually have a free publicity challenge on my website right now. It's a 5-day video series, and you can go to tararaybradford.com/PR-checklist, and you can get that on my website. And my course, I'm currently accepting applications for the January 7th round of my course on how to become your own publicist. So if you're interested in that, it's called Imposter to Influencer, and you can find that on my website as well.
And also, where can they reach you on social media? What is your handle
It's Tara Rae Bradford on everything:
on
LinkedIn,
everything?
Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest,
Awesome.
Facebook.
Awesome. Well, good luck with everything and enjoy London and make sure to
Thank
post plenty of
you.
pictures for us. And everybody out there, thank you so much for listening and making the Sisterhood of Sweat in the top 200 while I've been down with my hamstring. Appreciate the listen and the love, and please review this in iTunes and let us know how much you liked it. Give us some feedback, what resonated with you, what didn't resonate, and have a great weekend. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Tara.
Bye, Linda.